President Clinton's favorite mayor. I mentioned that to you before, but on all the jobs that you created working with Irvin Jacob in software manufacturing and development in San Diego. I also wanted to get back to the cross-border question. I know it's a complex one and not sure where we are. Do you have any updates or thoughts on that?
Well, you know, I think that the strategy is not the same strategy we've always had. So Chamber goes back and talks to the San Diego delegation. Everybody goes back and talks to the San Diego delegation. Well, the San Diego delegation, one of them lives around the corner from my house. I can talk to her any day I want. They're not the ones we need to convince. We need to convince Iowa. We need to convince Pennsylvania. We need to convince those 27 states who Mexico is the first, second, or third largest trading partner. So at the EDC dinner the other night, there was a congressional member from Philadelphia, from Pennsylvania, who's on the Border Infrastructure Committee, and he actually came out to see what the border infrastructure looked like. And I got a chance to talk to him that night. He said nobody in D.C. understands what I saw today. They did not see the massive traffic jams. They didn't see the massive mess that's down there. They don't realize that they haven't funded this whole thing, and they don't realize the opportunity loss that there is right now in that border. And he's the head of that one committee that actually is going to help us in terms of getting the budget to do that. So it's the appropriations in the president's budget. It's our job to go back to D.C. now and not talk to the California delegation, but instead talk to Iowa and Kentucky and Tennessee and New York and New Jersey, who have huge trading relationships with Mexico because the goods flow right through here. So that's what we'll be doing. The presidential permits have been issued for OTI 2 and for the cross-border airport facility. Cross-border airport facility, my understanding is there may be a groundbreaking at the end of the year to allow people in San Diego to fly, or on the U.S. side, park on the U.S. side, ticket on the U.S. side, probably check your luggage on the U.S. side, walk across the bridge to Rodriguez Field and take flights to Asia, take flights to Latin America and all over Mexico.
Could you explain, you say Otay Mesa 2, how important that is on the trucking
Otay
side?
Mesa 2 is tremendously important. That's one that Sandag's pushing forward along with all of us. We worked at Sandag on that for a long time. It'll be a toll facility. You've got to pay to use it, but it'll be a commercial crossing first. They're polling to see what the toll should be on both sides of the border right now, and there'd be one combined toll most likely. And that would allow for that crossing not only to build the facility so we don't have to depend on Washington to do that, but secondly, it would also allow us to pay for the customs and border agents to actually get people through there. They're talking about a 15 to 20 minute wait time instead of 4 to 6 to 8 hours that's going on right now, where we're seeing the environmental issues, where we're seeing the toll and commercial crossings, and I don't think we're all that far away from that. Sandag estimates by the end of the year probably they'll have enough information to see if it can be bonded out and we can actually do it.
I couldn't agree with you more about the need for streamlining the regulations and this nightmare that we have in the terms of CEQA and all the other regulations that burden businesses and anyone who lives in California. But I wanted to follow up with the tax issue in that I think it's kind of oversimplified that California has the highest tax rates, because they absolutely do not have the highest tax rate when it comes to property tax. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to engage in a dialogue or explore the possibility of exchanging, get rid of income tax in exchange for adjusting our property taxes. For example, I think that's why we didn't have a mass exodus to Texas. Texas has no state income tax, along with 7 or other state taxes.
Let me be very honest with you. After having been a politician for 7 years, first of all, never having been one before, and then plunged into politics, that discussion will never take place. It simply will never take place. In Sacramento, there are 2 parties that are there. There's not much middle ground anymore, and a discussion like that takes middle ground. And there have been tax proposal after tax proposal after tax proposal after studies have been done showing how you could more fairly tax everybody so that it would work out, so that jobs could be created. That never goes anywhere because it requires two parties to work together, and you're not going to see it. And I'm just telling you from my position, you have to have people who are willing to work on those issues, and there seems to be no willingness whatsoever right now to do that. I talked to one of our state legislators the other day, and I said, how do we get to the moderate middle so we can talk to both sides on these issues? And he said, there is no moderate middle. There are moderates on both sides, but they're not allowed to be in the middle because neither side has the heft to allow it. So if you're a Democrat and you have a supermajority, your leadership's not letting you divert from that. And if you're a Republican and you're one of 25, they're not letting you move off of that, and there's nobody willing to meet in the middle because you can't get to 41 on either side unless it's one side doing it. So, I've never been more discouraged in my life than I am watching state government right now. It disturbs me to no end because nobody's willing to work together on these issues that I can see.
Yeah, because I was hoping we could say, you say Sacramento's the biggest threat, that it could also, if we could somehow turn that around, it would be the biggest opportunity. But
well, one of you need to run for governor.
Well,
Oh, Mike,
You pretty much answered my question because it's a political gridlock. But then, of course, I've been with Jeannie for a long time, and so we've gone through that a couple of times. What's the possibility, and Carly Baja might be able to answer this as well, what's the possibility of establishing a free trade zone between these two economic powerhouses so that we minimize these weights?
I have to be honest with you, I'm not smart enough to answer that. I've had it suggested a lot of times. We at one point had talked about a small free trade zone. You know where the Americas is down there, the plaza where you do the duty-free shop or the cheap shopping and all
San
that.
Ysidro.
We had suggested, some developers had talked about a free zone where people from both sides could shop there, and the customs and all that was on the other sides of each. But I'm just not smart enough to talk about that.
Christine, did you want to speak to that at all, or?
I'll speak. I don't know it in depth, but what I do know, there's been a number of ideas out there, and you've probably heard them longer than I have, and that is of a special economic zone, and they're proposing that for the Mexican side. And, we already have NAFTA, which no one is supposed to use that term, NAFTA, but, there are opportunity costs. There are certainly challenges to NAFTA, but it's been a huge benefit.
Yes.
Particularly now, as the dust really isn't settling on globalization, and as we come out of this recovery, and we see what's happening with the large trading blocks around the world, whether it's Europe or Asia, we're sitting right here in the middle of one of the most important ones, and that's North America. Mexico, United States, and Canada. And we have a special relationship. It can be improved, but having 3 different currencies is actually makes us the most competitive of just about any place else. Look at the problems in Europe. By having a fixed currency, it's created all kinds of problems. So expanding foreign trade zones, can it help some industry? Creating a special zone, that's more for Mexico, their own internal, kind of eliminating kind of some of the final taxes and kind of other kinds of regulations. So I don't.
There are a lot. It's a complex
Yeah.
issue, obviously, and it took a long time to create NAFTA. But I was from Canada when NAFTA was established, and so I had to bring that into the conversation because we are a border zone.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But you're saying the 3 different currencies has enabled us to manage our fiscal policy differently because Europe can't do it as well now because they're on a common currency? Is that what I understood you saying?
Well, so
Somewhat?
Europe never put into place the kind of mechanism to politically address those kinds of problems. Whereas we have these three different floating currencies. So if you're a company, I mean, taking it from a company's perspective, it allows you a huge benefit as well to take advantage of different elements, since we are part of NAFTA.
If you look at Europe, I mean, the euro is worth the same on the U.S. dollar no matter where you're at. Now, if you're in a very depressed economy and your euro's way up there, you're finding you don't have the buying power, and you're finding tourists aren't coming, and you're finding that you can't purchase the same, or people can't purchase your products, where if it floats at different rates in different countries, you can adjust your currency to actually match your economic condition.
Got it. All right, very nice, thank you. Other questions? Patrick?
Hey folks, thank you very much for your presentations, both very interesting. I'd be curious as to your early thoughts on Mayor Filner's concept of making a proposal for the 2024 Binational Olympics. What are your thoughts?
Heck, you know, it would bring lots of attention. You know, it's actually an idea that's not new. When I got started at the EDC and working on Cali Baja, I was told then that Malin Burnham was part of a group who a number of years ago was very active. So, I mean, it would be great. I mean, you'd get a lot of infrastructure built out of it.
And I think Bob's feeling on it, having talked to him about it, is that he feels it's a win-win. Either you get it, which I don't think is very realistic, and I don't know that he does either, but or you work with the two regions together much more closely, and in that process, you figure out how to handle a lot of the issues. So I mean, I don't see a big downside to it as long as a lot of money's not spent on it. Some of these Olympic bids, though, are tremendously costly, and that's going to have to be raised somewhere. So I think the concept is really good, and you know, we'll see how it plays out.
Did I hear, somebody's told me $100 million to make a bid, is that?
What's
It's
your
pretty
Chicago
expensive.
spent?
It's
100
pretty
million?
expensive.
Yeah.
And that's private money, then, right? That's, I would imagine.
Well, you know, I've tried to raise a lot of money, and $100 million is a lot of money to raise. You don't call Qualcomm and say, "Can we borrow $100 million to make this bid?" I mean,
Right.
we're more frugal than that.
Okay, who else? Please,
I have a question.
can you speak up a little louder?
I am an economist and small business owner here in town, and last time I went to the port of San Diego and take a look at it, and I was wondering, there's so much opportunity, you know, at the port of San Diego, and what are San Diego doing, like, you know, we're trying to squeeze money out of the port of San Diego? Like, do you guys ever?
Could you repeat it a little bit, because you were very soft.
I think I got it.
Okay, but I don't think everybody heard.
Well, he's asking about the Port of San Diego, and it seems to be underutilized, and
Yeah.
what are we doing to squeeze more money out of it? You know, I think that's been a question for a long time. I think we're seeing more trade agreements that are being created. I think the port's working a lot harder on it. But the other part of the port that's important, and I think this is usually missed in the conversation, there's one group who wants to turn it into hotels and a stadium and a lot of other stuff, which would be an economic driver. The problem with that is, though, the Port of San Diego, and you're talking about the 10th Avenue Terminal, I assume, where most of the commerce comes in and all of that, that's really important for a couple gigantic reasons. Number one, that is the buffer between the tourism industry and the shipbuilding industry. So you don't have a NASCO down there if you have hotels on the 10th Avenue Terminal, because what happens is, as soon as you put a hotel there, then the people in the hotel are saying, "Jesus, it's noisy. It's happening 24 hours a day around here." You got cranes over there. They're dropping metal. They're banging. They're doing. That's really one of the biggest issues. Is you have to have that buffer. The Navy has said they would start exploring other ports to diversify, because that's their buffer. That's also the roll in, roll out capability strategically for the Marine Corps. So when they're deploying and they're getting on some of the ships, that is where they do that. So the port is really working actively to bring more commerce into that. We're not a container port, and we're not apt to be one anytime soon. But there's other things that can be done with that, and I think the port's working really hard on that.
Yes?
I think the industrial economy has left because of the stated reasons whether it's taxation or room for growth. But there are emerging new business formats. For example, the brewery industry is making a big.
Why'd you point to me?
I've seen you a few times through the I know you know that industry. Plus the farm-to-table industry, the green energy industry is making coming up to be a dominant part here. What kind of programs or operates does either of your organizations?
Well, when you were mayor, my organization, the EDC, did a number of mayoral roundtables to kind of connect these different industries with City Hall, with the mayor. So he would get to learn more about them, and they would have access to him, and you went around and saw these different places. So, I mean, we see this as something very important to kind of really identify these up-and-coming industries.
So the brewing industry, I mean, it's exploded, literally.
Yeah.
I think that there are probably 12 breweries around, and there are about 66 right now. There are about 36 applications, new applications coming in. And everybody laughs about that, but it has the highest job multiplier of any industry in San Diego. So for each new job in a brewery, it creates 5.2 new jobs out in the rest of San Diego. So where I talked about 2.5 jobs created in the innovation economy and the traded economies, it's 5.2 in the brewing industry, just because of the way it is and how they do their work. So, that's actually a pretty important one, and it actually draws a lot of tourists to San Diego. You'll find a lot of brew tours coming from LA every single weekend, coming from all over the coast. Clean tech was a huge thing. We partnered with EDC on from a city perspective, and you've seen really explosive growth in that. And the analytics that I told you about were the hub for that. I would have never known that had not EDC brought down a group of people involved in analytics and big data. And they're the ones who put all the statistics together, and this is really one of the largest hubs. It is the largest hub probably in the world of that type of data. So we're finding new emerging industries, clusters like that, and once they start growing, you find others coming around. Sports equipment. San Diego's got a huge industry in that, and that's applied sciences. It's all the new synthetic materials. It's the the different engineering that goes into creating a different golf shaft and a different golf head, and skateboards of all things, and surfboards and all of that. So we see those all the time, and those are things that we really encourage to grow by working with them industry by industry so that they can actually grow and thrive.
Well, that's still not manufacturing of it, it's design.
It's mostly design and all of that. And as I said, most of the manufacturers are also. Now, I'll give you a different example, though. Went out to Taylor Guitar the other day. It's out in El Cajon, most amazing place I've ever been into. And they produce the highest end guitars in the world, and they literally had pallets about this size and about this tall, just of this one thing right here, with $1 million worth of lumber on that. They use sustainable timber practices where they will go to different countries around the world, and they'll only take one tree. And they pick out the tree, and then they have the natives harvest it, whatever village, whatever country, and they only take out one, and they may have that pallet of lumber for that one very rare wood, where they'll make 20 guitars a year, and they may have that for 20 years because they're so careful about that. But they produce a lot of guitars, but they produce very high-end things. So when the state of California came up with a lot of the air quality things, Bob Taylor, instead of complaining, said, let me hire scientists to figure out how to do this, created robots that actually do that, enclosed things to do the painting and the misting and the sanding and all those repetitive things. And then instead of keeping that as a proprietary secret, he actually has invited Fender and all these other guitar manufacturers in, because he feels very strongly if one bad guitar goes out, it doesn't matter who makes it, it hurts the whole industry. So, I mean, we still see places like that, but they're few and far between.
But how do you nurture that type of?
Well, I think that, I didn't meet him the other day, but I have to tell you, there are 350 employees out there that they're craftsmen, and he nurtures them. each guitar goes out with his seal of approval, and they have check after check after check on the quality of that, and nothing goes out of there without that. I think that that's really a homegrown story that's absolutely incredible when you think
So
about it.
getting back to the, Arizona, just letting down, giving away the whole store to get companies, luring companies out there, they're gonna end up being like Tijuana. If you wanna live in a
No, I don't think that,
environment
I don't
doesn't
think
have
that's the case at all,
regulations.
and they don't reduce the standards on that, but they have a finite process. And finiteness, when you're trying to create jobs, is one of the most important things. And it's not just Arizona. I mean, Florida's the same way. Texas is the same way. Tennessee is attracting a lot of business right now. So, I think that they've figured out a way to do it that generates the jobs, which generates the economy and the tax revenue.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that's crazy about it. So there's plenty of case studies that talk about, luring Motorola from Lisle, Illinois to Libertyville, or something, you're just transferring it 50 miles and you're going to, give the company $125 million.
Well,
to
but,
stay.
see, you're talking the same state at that point. It makes no sense on that.
Well, I mean,
But it talks about if you're gonna lose them from the state of California and our tax base, that makes me angry, because that means my taxes are gonna go up to make up that difference. So I think we have to think about unintended consequences of all of these. And there can be business concessions made that don't give away the whole store, an enterprise zone type thing, where you give them tax credits for hiring from disadvantaged zip codes. Makes all the sense in the world. That's what got Soy Tech into San Diego, because we worked with them on that issue.
So is Chamber, I know, is a member organization, is EDC a member organization as well?
Yes.
All right, I don't know how many of you are members, but could you make your 30-second, 1-minute pitch on why you
Well,
should be a member of the
yeah,
Chamber, or why you should be a member of EDC?
I think, I'll just give for the Chamber. I mean,
Yeah.
we have 3,000 businesses that we represent, from the very large to the very small. Most of our businesses are small business. We give classes in just about everything you can give a class in to help a small business owner, from presentation skills to doing a 30-minute commercial to how to go to a mixer and go to get into business with other people, to putting our big businesses like Qualcomm, SDG&E, and all of them out and telling the small businesses how they can get contracts with them. So the Chamber represents all of that through policy and also working at educating legislators.
Okay, great. Membership of EDC?
EDC is much smaller. I think we have around 130, 140 company, and we call them investors. They're members, they're investors. We have a very different setup from the Chamber in that sense. It tends to be the larger companies. It's not, most of the, in fact, virtually all of the companies that are investors are already made it. And so it's more about working, they become engaged because they want to help address a lot of the issues that are important to them to be competitive. And so they find it's one of the, in addition to almost all of them are members of the Chamber, it's a place for them to become more engaged at a different level on these kinds of issues.
I'm going to have to wrap up. Would you thank both our guest speakers here tonight, Jerry and Christina? They were fabulous, yes? Thank you both. One commercial for us. Next week we have a terrific evening for our Geodesign San Diego event on Wednesday. You can see it on our calendar. We're having Matt Perry and Aaron Steckelberg. You've seen their work at the San Diego UT when they do graphic visualization, data visualization. Look at those little names at the bottom. These are the premier data viz, visual graphic guys in our town, and they'll be here next Wednesday night to show you their work, tell you how it is. It's about layered maps using infographics to tell a story. We're honored to have them next week as well, so join us if you can. Thank you both. Pleasure to have you here. Thank you. Jerry, thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you.